Welcome, sadhakas. We are learning to enter Shri Vidya Kshetra. It is transcendental domain. Today, in third learning step, our focus is to remain upon Sthapatya, the geometric formats. The Vedic systems have settled Sthapatya Measuring Rod, and along this geometric format, Vedas, Vedic systems, Vedic mathematics, Vedic sciences, Vedic technologies, existence phenomenon within frame and existence phenomenon without frames. The whole discipline is availing this format. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the essence of Vedic knowledge. Sutra Sthanam, Siddhi Sthanam, Srimad Durga Sapsati, all these scriptures avail this format, Sthapatya Measuring Rod format, and as such, learning of the features and values of Sthapatya Measuring Rod is going to be of very great help for us to glimpse, imbibe the Shri Vidya Kshetra. The learning steps. The focus of first learning step has been upon distinctiveness of single-digit numbers. The focus of second learning step has been upon double-digit numbers of spatial order of four space, creator's space of Chatushpeeth foundation. A step ahead today. As third step, our focus is upon the mathematical domain of triple-digit numbers of solid order of five space, transcendental space. That way, sequentially, these three steps are of mathematical domains of Ganita Sutras 1, 2, and 3 respectively. These three steps as such are of features of individual discretes, paired discretes, and interlocked triples discretes. First feature of such triples is of beginning, end, and middle placements. The second feature of them is as to the first, the second, and third members of the triples occupying the middle placement. The third feature of such triples is that the beginning and end synthesize, and the middle and at the same time, middle splits into beginning and end values. Fourth feature of such triples is of reach from spatial order to the solid order as a reach from spatial order domain to solid order origin within creator's space. With it happens an interlocking of transcendental space and self-referral space. This transcendental phenomenon within creator's space leads to Nishta, processing of two folds, namely Sankhya Nishta and Yoga Nishta being of unified format. This makes Sankhya Nishta and Yoga Nishta not only being complementary and supplementary, but also being parallel at each processing step. That way, we shall restate it, what is going to be the feature. These features are to be focused again. Focus of first learning step has been upon distinctiveness of single-digit numbers. The focus of second learning step has been upon double-digit numbers of spatial order of four space, creator space of Chatushpeeth Foundation. Today, as third step, the focus is to remain upon the mathematical domain of triple-digit numbers of solid order of 5-space transcendental space. Sequentially, these 3 steps are of mathematical domains of Ganita Sutra 1, 2, and 3 respectively. As such, these 3 steps are going to be of features of individual discretes, paired discretes, and interlocked triples. Now, the focus today as third learning step is going to be upon the features of interlocked triples. Let us have a pause. Let us sit comfortably. Let us permit the mind to glimpse and imbibe the setup of triples. The first feature of such triples is of beginning, end, and middle placements. The second feature of them is as to the first, the second, and third members of the triples occupying the middle placement. It is the third feature of such triples that the beginning and end synthesize, and the middle, and at the same time, middle splits into the beginning and end values. It is the fourth feature of such triples that is going to be reached from spatial order to the solid order. This as a reach from spatial order domain to solid order origin within creator's space is going to remain a point of focus. With it happens an interlocking of transcendental space, 5-space, and self-referral space. This is the enlightenment as that within the cavity of heart of Transcendental Lord Shiv is the seat of self-referral Lord Vishnu, and simultaneously within the heart of the self-referral Lord Vishnu is the seat of the Transcendental Lord Shiv. Lord Shiv accepts Lord Vishnu as the Lord. Lord Vishnu accepts Lord Vishnu as the Lord. It is this feature which deserves to be imbibed fully. It is this transcendental phenomenon within creator's space which leads to Nishtha, means processing, and same is of 2 folds, namely Sankhya Nishtha and Yoga Nishtha, and both being of unified format. It is Sankhya Nishtha and Yoga Nishtha which are parallel to each other, and also these are complementary and supplementary of each other. And this is the processing feature which is to be imbibed by us. It is by imbibing this complementary and supplementary nature of Sankhya Nishtha and Yoga Nishtha that one will be acquiring needed values for entering Shri Vidya Kshetra. Sankhya Nishtha is presuming the existence of geometric formats and values of numbers are availed. On the other hand, Yoga Nishtha presumes the existence of the values of numbers and avails the geometric formats. So the artifices of numbers and dimensional frames and their interlocking is the feature which is to be imbibed well by us. For it, we have to take it that this happening because of interlocking of artifices of numbers and dimensional frames of geometric formats is the happening for which we have to sit comfortably, and we have to permit our mind to continuously remain in prolonged sittings of trance and to be parallel with it to imbibe the same fully. Let us sit comfortably. Now let us concentrate as that the space has a content. This content is in the form of lumps. These content lumps make domains, and domains, as in the role of dimension, result into domain supplet, which is transcendence. So transcendence from dimension to dimension of dimension is the processing step which is to be learned. Let us revisit. There is a space. Space has a content, so space becomes the content. The content is available in lumps. These lumps make domains. Domains function as dimensions, and with the functioning of the domain supplets, and this domain supplet is transcendence. So we have to learn transcendence, which will take from dimension to dimension of a dimension. The second step, which is to be learned, is about the way n-space domain content supplets. And the supplet is going to be from n as a domain to n-2 and n-2, means the pair of dimensions, and n-4 as dimension of dimension. This supplet, as of 4 distinct units, domain, pair of dimensions, and dimension of dimension, together sum up 4n-8, which is 4 multiplied by n-2. So the supplet of the domain takes us to quadruple dimensions. Means this supplet is going to be within the manifestation of dimensional frame of quadruple dimensions. That means this supplet is the feature of the creators of space of dimensional frame of quadruple dimensions. It is this feature which deserves to be imbibed well. Once we are parallel with this supplet phenomenon, then simultaneously we have to be parallel with the dimensional synthesis. The dimensions of the same order synthesize. If dimensions are linear, then the pair of dimensions will synthesize value 3. The triple dimensions will synthesize value 6. Quadruple will 10, and so on. 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, 21, 28, 36, 49 is the sequential dimensional synthesis values of single, double, triple, quadruple, penta, hexa, hepta, and these number of dimensions. But if the order of the dimension is spatial, that means if 2 space is the dimension, then the pair of spatial dimensions will synthesize value 4. The triple spatial dimensions will synthesize value 6. So this sequential synthesis of spatial dimensions is going to be of values 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Let us have a pause. The linear dimensions synthesize values 1 for single dimension, 3 for pair of dimensions, 6 for triple dimensions, 10 for quadruple dimensions, and so on. At the same time, the single spatial dimension is of value 2, while the pair of spatial dimensions are value 4, triple dimensions are value 6, and so on. But if the dimension is of a 0 order, then 0 number of 0 order dimensions or any dimension as of 0 number of dimensions is always leading to value 0. Now see, if within a space we are having linear dimensions as well as the spatial dimensions, means if we are having a pair of distinct generic dimensions within the same space, then the dimensional synthesis is taking us to a very, very unique sequence of values as is depicted in terms of the difference of values of linear dimensions and spatial dimensions. And the same in general will be of dimensions of order n and dimensions of order n plus 1. The difference value comes to be -1, -1, 0, 2, 5, 9, 14, 20, 27. Let us have a pass. Let us be face to face this happening. The linear dimensions sequentially synthesize the values 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, 21, 28, 36, 45. And the spatial dimensions synthesize the values 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. And the difference sequence values come to be -1, -1, 0, 2, 5, 9, 14, 20, 27. Now see, there is a sequential increase in it as -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let us have a pass. Let us imbibe this. Firstly, we have to be face to face with the domain split spectra. And simultaneously, we also have to be face to face with dimensional synthesis. If we are parallel with this pair of features of domain split and of dimensional synthesis, then we are potentializing ourselves for proper initiation to enter the Shri Vidya Kshetra, the Transcendental Kshetra, the Vedic processing steps reach values. For it, we can now have a visit to the setup of a Sthapatya Measuring Rod. Sthapatya Measuring Rod is a synthetic setup of hypercubes 1 to 6, the representative regular bodies of 1 space to 6 space within 4 space. Now see, if we are having spaces 1 to 6, then we will be having hypercubes 1 to hypercube 6 as their representative bodies. Let us visit the tabulation on the computer screen. The first row mentions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as the number of spaces. Then the second row represents the domain parts, a raised to power 1, a raised to power 2, a raised to power 3, a raised to power 4, a raised to power 5, a raised to power 6. The third row gives the symbolic representations for it as interval, square, cube, hypercube 4, hypercube 5, hypercube 6. The fourth row gives the boundary components. Interval has 2 endpoints, square has 4 boundary lines, cube has 6 surface plates, hypercube 4 has 8 solid components, hypercube 5 has 10 creative components, hypercube 6 has 12 transcendental components. The fifth row gives the complete depiction of these hypercubes in terms of their domain parts as well as in terms of their boundary parts. A raised to power 1 is to 2b is the depiction of interval. A square is to 4b is the depiction of square. A raised to power 3 is to 6b square comes to be the depiction of cube, and so on. Now, the last row gives the number of coordinates needed for fixation of the boundary. So for interval 1 into 2, 2 coordinates are needed. For square 2 into 4, 8 coordinates, and sequentially 18, 32, 50, and 72. These are the features of manifestation of the individual components of the Sthapatya Measuring Rod. Hypercubes 1 to 6 together synthesize Sthapatya Measuring Rod, and the individual components, interval, square, cube, hypercube 4, hypercube 5, hypercube 6, are leading us to the features as are tabulated, and in particularly in terms of the needed coordinates for fixation of the boundaries of these individual components, these values sequence comes to be 2, 8, 18, 32, 50, 72. It is this feature which deserves to be revisited, as these take us to the 2 coordinates for interval and 8 coordinates for square give a split 2 plus 6, and 18 coordinates for cube gives split as 2, 6, and 10. Step ahead, for hypercube 4, it comes to be 2, 6, 10, 14. For hypercube 5, it comes to be 2, 6, 10, 14, 18. And finally, for hypercube 6, same comes to be 2, 6, 10, 14, 18, 22. Let us have a pause here. See, value 2 is the summation value of 4 folds of hypercube 1. Value 6 is the summation value of 4 folds of hypercube 2. Value 10 is the summation value of hypercube 3. Value 14 is the summation value of 4 folds of hypercube 4. Likewise, 18 and 22. Therefore, this internal organization for each component makes their specific Sthapatya Measuring Rods. Hypercube 1 is having Sthapatya Measuring Rod of hypercube 1. However, hypercube 2 is having synthetic measuring rod as hypercube 1 and hypercube 2. Hypercube 3 is having synthetic measuring rod of hypercube 1, hypercube 2, and hypercube 3. Hypercube 4 is having Sthapatya Measuring Rod of hypercube 1, hypercube 2, hypercube 3, and hypercube 4. And hypercube 5 is having Sthapatya Measuring Rod of hypercubes 1 to 5. And finally, the hypercube 6 is having Sthapatya Measuring Rod of hypercubes 1 to 6. Let us sit comfortably and let us be parallel with these organization features of the Sthapatya Measuring Rods, which in case of hypercube 6 is the setup of hypercubes 1 to 6. However, in case of hypercube 5, it is of hypercubes 1 to 5, and so on. One shall sit comfortably and be parallel with it. Once we are parallel with it, then we can glimpse blissfully the organization of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is a chase of the existence phenomenon within rays of the sun as a six-space body. So this chase is being had by Vedic systems, by Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in terms of his Sthapatya Measuring Rod of both orientations, as 4-space plays the role of dimension of 6-space, and it itself being of spatial dimension of dimension. So the pair of orientations come into play for this organization. Sadhakas are fulfilled with intensity of urge to be parallel with Vedic systems. Sadhakas fulfilled with intensity of urge to initiate themselves properly shall visit and revisit the organization format of Srimad Bhagavad Gita as a chase of the existence phenomenon with the rays of the sun along the Sthapatya Measuring Rod. Once we will be parallel with these chase steps, then we shall be appreciating as to how the manifestation of existence phenomenon within frames in terms of Panchama Bhut will be blissfully within the comprehension of us. Panchama Bhut formulation is of Transcendental Code value 68. So Prithvi, Apa, Agni and Vayu as first four elements and Akash as the fifth element make the value 68. And the reverse orientation, Dhruv, Surya, Akash, Vayu, Agni, make value 67. However, in this process, Agni transforms into Tej. And so, in both orientations, the value remains 68. One shall sit comfortably and be parallel with this chase. These chase steps will help us comprehend the way the Vedic knowledge systems are chasing the existence phenomenon within frames in terms of the features of Panch Mahabhut in their both orientations. Let us revisit, let us concentrate and see the formulation Prithvi is of Transcendental 25, which is 5 square. And we know Rik is of Transcendental Code value 5. So the dimensions being availed here are with pair of axes lead to pair of Rik as 5 square. Further, we know that 3 space plays the role of origin of 2 space. So 8 subcubes synthetic setup leads to value 2 raised to the power 3. Further, we know 4 space plays the role of origin of 3 space. So hypercube 4, 2, 3, 4, 5 of summation value 14, parallel with the Transcendental Code value of formulation Agni. Within 4 space, 3 space has a degree of freedom of motion, which manifests as the 13th edge for the cube, which is parallel with the Transcendental Code value of formulation Vayu. And finally, the Transcendental origin being of a solid order, hence the space. One shall sit comfortably and be parallel with this Sthapatya of these formulations of these Transcendental Code values. It is this interlocking of the values of numbers and dimensional frames of the geometric formats which deserves to be imbibed fully. Once we will be parallel with it, then it will be very blissful for us to see how in the opposite orientation, Dhruv, as of Transcendental Code value 19, is parallel with 19 versions of hypercube 9. Value 13 is parallel with 13 versions of hypercube 6. Value 8 is parallel with domain 4. Vayu is parallel with hypercube of a half unit, 3.5. And Tej is the dimensional frame of Transcendental domain. 9 space, 6 space, and 4 space are interlocked as the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter of square. Square as quadruple, quarter squares are of structural components 9, 6, 6, and 4. One shall sit comfortably and be parallel with this feature of the Sthapatya Mahabhut, and values of numbers. Numbers, existence phenomenon, and geometric formats are so interlocked that by being parallel with it, we can be blissfully parallel with the Vedic systems. It is in this background that we can have a fresh visit to the interlocking of the numbers and geometric formats. Number one is the summation value of hypercube half. Number two is the summation value of 4 folds of hypercube 1 of full unit. Value 3 is the summation value of hypercube 1 of half unit. Value 4 is the domain split of 3 space content. And sequentially, from number 1 to number 100, we can have parallel organization and interlocking of artifices of numbers and geometric formats. As such, sadhakas shall sit comfortably and have full comprehension of the dimensional spaces. If we are sitting within a room, then our mental state will be as if the whole universe is 3 space. However, the moment we'll come out of a cube, we'll come out of a room, then our mental state will be as if the universe is not 3 space, it is beyond, so it is 4 space. And if we are not locked within the 4 space room, then we will be of mental state as that the universe is not 4 space, it is 5 space. Step ahead likewise, if we don't get locked within 5 space room, then we will be of mental state as that space is not 5 space. It takes us ahead to 6 space like sun at the origin of a space. Sadhakas fulfilled with intensity efforts to be parallel with Vedic systems shall sequentially melt their mental states. Once the mental states will be of the order of sequential organization of the space, one will be parallel with the Vedic systems, Vedic knowledge. And for it, we have to be of a mental state of glimpsing while sitting at seat of the origin. Once we will be at the seat of origin of 3 space, we will be glimpsing 4 space. Once we will be at the seat of origin of 4 space, we will be glimpsing 5 space. Once we will be sitting at the seat of origin of 5 space, we will be glimpsing 6 space. And once we will be sitting at the origin of 6 space, we will be comprehending the origin of our solar universe. Sadhakas are fulfilled with intensity of work shall sit comfortably and glimpse while sitting at the seat of origin of spaces compactified at the origin. Thank you very much.